Sinisterism is about finding the primal aspects of the left-hand path, primal in history, primal in the psyche, thus obtaining truth. Thomas Leroy.
Greetings, my friends, and welcome back to your dose of sinister heathenry. But for those new to the channel, I'm Thomas Leroy, founder of the International Left-Hand Path organization, the Sect of the Horn God. The sect is an educational foundation created to not only make those with a black flame aware of its glow, but to also restore the shadow aspects to the ancient gods by going deep into the past, not only historically, but also psychologically. For the primal depths of the psyche are limitless. So, if this sounds interesting, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And if you want to learn more, join the organization, the Sect of the Horn God, at the link down below. Thank you. One of the best new filmmakers working today is Robert Eggers, and his 2022 film, The Northman, is already one of my all-time favorite films. His latest movie is Nosferatu, which is also brilliant. Now, I hope we're all aware that it's a remake of a 1922 film, a classic that just so happened to have been produced by an actual occultist by the name of Albin Grau. And there was the 1979 version made by Werner Herzog starring Klaus Kinski. In this latest version, though, every scene from a visual perspective was perfection. It was like watching a 19th century Gothic painting come to life. Even though the argument can be made that there is a connection between the left-hand path and vampires, more on that later, I have mixed feelings when it comes to the topic. This is because most interpretations of vampires are shit, and this is coming from somebody who has framed posters of vampire films on his walls. No Twilight shit, don't worry. Now, a little about my personal background. I come from what can be called early goth culture, even though way back when we didn't label ourselves with that moniker. Unlike you kids of today, we weren't into labels. And I still own Victorian garb. I find comfort in it. And even with all this, I would have to say I am not part of the vampire subculture. It's too formulaic, too standardized. You know what I mean? It's predictable. I think this is because it's based on Hollywood's interpretation of vampires and not folklore. That's the reason why I prefer the different Nosferatu interpretations of vampires. What I like is the vampire is truly a monster. And with this latest version, Robert Eggers did his research and turned Count Orlok into a reanimated corpse. Now, some people online have complained about the mustache, but that's what a long dead Eastern European aristocrat would have. He would have that big bushy mustache. Orlok is a monster out of folklore, Slavic folklore. There's something almost exotic about Slavic culture. We citizens of the Western world are inundated with Germanic and Celtic folk tales and mythology. They're in everything from Snow White to Lord of the Rings to comic books. I don't think we realized how ingrained in our culture they are, but the Slavic traditions, except for maybe the Witcher, really haven't made much of a dent in our storytelling. Except when it comes to vampires. In my last video on how to connect with your primal god, I touched on heritage, the ancestors, and how important it is. Now, I'm 1/4 Slavic. My great-grandparents were from a region of Eastern Europe called Galicia, now not far from the foot of the Carpathian Mountains. There are even baby pictures of me in a little traditional Polish outfit. Because I have that blood flowing through my veins, I've become very interested in Eastern European folk tales and mythology. And of course, the darker the traditions, the better. Slavic vampires are quite a bit different than the elegant and aristocratic vampires found in Hollywood and modern fiction. Despite modern reinterpretations of vampires as suave, seductive beings, Slavic traditions retained a more primal, creepy image, often associated with disease, suffering, and death. The concept of the vampire in Slavic traditions goes way the hell back to the pre-Christian era when ancient pagan beliefs dominated Eastern Europe. One idea out of many of how these vampire tales came about may have something to do with the condition of dead bodies. When dug up, if a body appeared well preserved or bloated, there had to be a supernatural reason for it. So Slavic vampires were sometimes depicted as swollen corpses with ruddy or darkened skin, indicating they had recently fed. Unlike later versions who were thin and pale, these creatures were thought to be filled with the blood of their victims. People who died under weird circumstances, such as suicide, not being baptized, or who died violently, were believed to be at risk of vampirism. Over time, Slavic vampire tales influenced literary and popular culture in Western Europe and beyond, inspiring Gothic literature such as Bram Stoker's Dracula. Even into the 21st century, these beliefs continue in rural areas of Eastern Europe, like in some parts of the Carpathian Mountains, where older customs related to protection against the undead still survive. This could be a manifestation of deep-seated anxieties about death, the afterlife, and supernatural evil. Sometimes that isn't so easy to release from the genetic memories, no matter how modern one may become. Now, getting to the left-hand path perspective, because that's what this channel is all about, the vampire can be seen as the archetypal example of self-deification, the pursuit of immortality, and the ultimate outsider. Because that's what we are, aren't we? The ultimate outsiders. Also, they can represent psychic transformation. This is because the vampire can represent the death of the old self that is then reborn with a greater awareness and power. Now, there are vampiric left-hand path orders out there, but I'm not going to get into them because I don't want to misinterpret what they're all about. Instead, we're going to touch upon the more spiritual or psychological angle in relation to the path. From a Jungian perspective, vampires can be interpreted as symbolic examples of deep psychological forces. And as creatures that consume the life force of others, psychic vampirism, where an individual unconsciously feeds off the emotional energy of others, comes into play. Thus, the vampire represents a parasitic dynamic within the psyche. And being those who are in touch with their darker aspects of being, we on this path should be able to utilize our vampiric skills when needed. As I've often said, we on the left-hand path are the monsters at the windows at night, peering into the home, that is, observing the status quo. And often we need to interact with conventional society, and psychic vampirism is sometimes needed. Understand that by absorbing the energy of a crowd or specific individuals, we can become more socially dominant, which can be useful. Like I stated, we are outsiders and will always be outsiders, but sometimes we have to play the game, and if we do, we might as well play to win. For example, in high-stress situations, we can utilize a little vampirism to pull energy from those around us. I'm not saying to be a phony. There are plenty of people I like and get along with who are not one of us. But it's always in the back of my mind that I'm different, that I'm an outsider. So to avoid awkwardness in certain social situations, our vampiric skills can be used to assert a form of dominance, guide conversations, and gain leverage. And after our social interactions with the status quo, psychic vampirism can be utilized to fuel rituals to enhance personal power and to deepen what can be called spiritual experiences. This is taking that bottled up psychic energy and focusing it on a desired outcome. That energy you absorbed from your, quote, victims. In conclusion, my friends, what's your opinion on vampirism in general and in relation to the left-hand path? And if you are a member of a left-hand path vampire organization, tell us about it. Leave a comment down below. I'm actually curious. Until next time, my friends.